Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Will you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Christopher Schurr, Schurr.
Let me just start out. Do you enjoy speaking in public?
Not particularly, no.
And throughout your life, is that something you don't particularly care for?
I'd say public speaking wasn't one of my strengths, no.
Now, you understand you have a right not to testify.
I do.
Why are you testifying?
I feel like it's important to get my side of the story out.
Now, we're going to go into several topics, obviously related to this case here, but just backing up a little bit in regards to your background and education. How old are you?
Currently 34,
How old were you in April of 2022?
31,
Where were you born?
Grand Rapids,
And where were you raised?
southeast side of Grand Rapids.
Do your parents reside in West Michigan here?
They do.
Are they in court here today?
Yeah.
Do you have any siblings?
Yes.
Are they also present in court?
Yes.
Are you married?
Yes.
How long have you been married?
10 years.
And where did you meet your wife?
High school.
So-
Bucket Center. Yeah.
Have you been together since high school?
Yes.
So essentially high school sweethearts?
Yes.
Now, where were you and your wife married?
We were married in Kenya.
And what brought you to Kenya?
We were there on a mission trip
I guess
a
I
couple
have to
years.
object, we're getting a little bit far afield, Your Honor, in terms of who cares whether they're married.
I think it goes to some of his experiences in life, Your Honor. I think it's relevant.
I'll sustain the objection because I do believe that particular question is just going a little bit deeper than relevant.
Now, does your wife work?
Yes.
What field does she work in?
Mental health.
And you yourself, did you go into public service as a police officer?
I did.
Fair to say both you and your wife went into fields to help others.
Yes.
Did you attend high school here in West Michigan?
Yes.
And did you graduate high school?
I did.
After high school, what did you do?
I went to college at Siena Heights University.
Did you graduate college?
I did.
What year would that have been, approximately?
2014.
What was your major or focused area of study in college?
I majored in business with a focus in accounting and a minor in criminal justice.
Did you receive any scholarships in college?
Originally, I had an athletic scholarship and later gotten both athletic and academic scholarships.
Pretty good grades?
Yes,
What was your GPA you graduated with?
a 3.8.
Okay. Now, as far as athletics go, what sport did you participate in college?
Track and field.
And were you a short distance or a long distance?
I was a sprinter.
Okay. After college, what did you do?
After college, I gotten a job in the private sector as an entry-level accountant.
And at some point, did you go back to school for continued career education?
Yes.
What did you do next?
I went to Lansing Community College for their police academy.
And why did you join the police academy?
I just wanted to do a job that was more fulfilling.
And what were your feelings on police work? Why police work?
It was a fulfilling job.
Schurr's testimony. Michaela.
There's more
Michaela.
voices, I don't know where that's coming from.
Sounded like medium, yeah.
No, it was your person, Sarah Lynch.
Very sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Dodge.
Thank you. Why did you pick police work?
It's never the same thing every day. To me, it was more fulfilling than working in an office, and you got to help people.
Now, what year approximately was that you attended the police academy?
2015.
And you mentioned LCC, Lansing Community College.
Yes.
Is that academy what's called an MCOLS accredited academy?
It is.
MCOL's Michigan Commission of Law Enforcement Standards. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
And I'm sure we could spend hours talking about the MCOL's Academy and the different topics, but just in general, what did your MCOL's Academy prepare you for?
I would say it gives you a foundation to continue training as a police officer.
And is your understanding that the basic standards trained at LCC is consistent with all other MCOL's accredited academies across the state?
That's my understanding.
How long was the academy at LCC?
Approximately 4 months.
Full-time?
Yes.
And what's full-time?
It's 40 plus hours a week.
Are there a variety of topics covered?
Yes.
Approximately how many?
And there's probably over 100 different topics.
And you give just a sampling of some of the basic topics covered at the LCC Academy.
I'd say the main ones are criminal law, investigations, use of force, first aid.
Now, use of force, that's a topic that's discussed going all the way back to your initial MCOL's Academy.
Correct.
And does MCOL's train you that you need to use force at times upon subjects?
Yes.
And do they give you instructions on how and perhaps when to use certain levels of command or force?
Yes.
At MCOL's, do they discuss some of the realities that police may encounter out in the field?
Yes.
Is that always predictable?
No.
Can you explain?
I'd say most of what we do out in the field is not predictable. It's a dynamic environment, and we train in a controlled setting.
Now, at the MCOL's Academy, is there always a perfect way or a best way to handle every situation or scenario?
I'd say we strive for perfection. Probably another sheet.
Does MCOL's, going all the way back, do they talk about certain circumstances that may be beyond an officer's control that might affect their performance in real life encounters?
Yes.
They talk about factors, and I'm sure there's a plethora of them, but reaction times, is that something that's discussed all the way back at MCOL's?
Yes.
What do they teach you about reaction times?
Essentially, action beats reaction.
And how do they, what's some examples of how they teach that?
One of the main ways is a 7-yard or a 21-foot rule, essentially, that someone could cover that distance and harm you before you could react.
And do they go through drills and videos and things like that as well to demonstrate this?
Yes.
So even back to MCOL's Academy, are you shown that there can be factors that put a police officer at a disadvantage?
Yes.
But even with knowledge of potential limitations, do you still need to respond to calls?
Yes.
You still need to enforce laws?
Yes.
Are the situations that police encounter, is it always safe?
Typically not.
But are you still required to march into a lot of volatile situations?
Yes.
What if you don't perform your essential functions, even going all the way back to the MCOL's Academy? What are you told if you don't perform your essential functions? What can be some of the consequences of that?
Either I or others could be injured, if not other consequences
Such
at your
as?
department, such as cowardice.
Okay. Now, going back to the MCOL's Academy, do they use scenarios and simulations?
Yes.
Is this meant, what is your understanding of why they do these scenarios and simulations?
It's just to get us used to problem solving and learning whatever they're trying to teach us at the time.
Are these run out in the real life field, or are they in a rather controlled setting?
Controlled setting.
Now, at the conclusion of the MCOL's Academy, are you given a rather lengthy and thorough examination to ascertain your knowledge on these topics?
Yes.
And are you ultimately given an examination?
Yes.
I'm sorry, are you ultimately required to attain a certain score?
Yes,
And did you pass the MCOL's Academy?
I did.
Now, after the LCC Academy, are you a fully licensed police officer?
You are not. You need to complete training at a department.
While you were in LCC, did you start to apply for jobs?
I did.
And was one of those departments GRPD?
Yes.
And was that a rather sought-after job back then?
I'd say so.
Why
yes.
is that?
The opportunities, the different departments, if you will, that you can get into.
Now, were you ultimately hired?
Yes.
What happens after you're hired into GRPD?
You go into an 8-week in-house training where you do more scenarios.
Okay. I know throughout the course of the trial, we've seen the video montage.
Yes.
What year was that video montage from?
2015?
And is that you at the 8-week GRPD Academy?
It is.
And is that full-time, the
Yes.
8-week? What's full-time for that academy?
I would say that was just 40 hours a week.
Okay. Now, are the topics covered at GRPD, are those identical to MCOLS, or how do you compare?
I would say they're more specific to Grand Rapids. Essentially, they're putting us in different scenarios and having to solve problems the way Grand Rapids wants us to solve them.
Okay. Covered some of the same topics as far as traffic stops, first aid, is that fair to say?
It's fair to say.
Now, do you cover firearms training?
Yes.
Are a lot of the concepts in firearms training similar from GRPD to MCOLS as far as the basic concepts?
The basics, yes. I think Grand Rapids probably more advanced than what the academy was.
What level of force is firearm deployment upon a human?
Deadly force.
And in GRPD, do they take you through scenarios and situations that police might encounter as is exhibited on the video there?
They do.
The same scenarios as LCC, or do they go through quite a few more?
Definitely a lot more. At LCC, you're more or less laying the groundwork and probably more book work and not as many scenarios. I felt as though Grand Rapids, we did more scenarios.
How many, roughly?
Probably thousands.
We saw just a sampling on the video of some of those scenarios.
Yes.
Now, as you're instructed on those scenarios, are you trained that there's only one way to effectively perform a task?
No.
Basically, what are they showing you there?
Essentially, there's a parameter, if you will, to handle it. There's definitely preferred ways, but there's definitely no person is the same. So the way I handle something is going to be different than what someone else handles something.
Now, does the GRPD Academy, similar to MCOLS, do they try to expose you to some of the limitations that an officer may expose out in real life?
Yes.
Do they discuss topics like human reaction time?
Yes.
Now, does GRPD, do they train you on weapons, other weapons as well?
Yes.
What weapons were you trained on with GRPD?
The Taser.
Any others?
Their issued firearm and pepper spray, baton.
Okay. Now, going to the Taser. You need a drink of water? Go
Okay.
ahead. All right. Who instructs the Taser training?
Master Taser instructor.
And we've sat through several experts on tasers, okay? So I'm not going to ask you about all of the workings of the Taser. But your Taser training, does that go all the way back to the 8-week that they start to train you?
Yes.
Is it lectures, hands-on? How do they instruct you?
Combination. There's definitely a classroom element, scenarios, and they do a voluntary exposure.
And we'll get to that in a moment here. But if used properly by a trained person, what is the main goal of using the Taser on a subject?
To achieve neuromuscular incapacitation.
And can the Taser be effective at causing
Yes.
incapacitation? And do you know that firsthand?
Yes.
Now, your voluntary tasing, was that back at your 8-week then?
Yes.
Mr. McFarland, could you just pull up? I believe it's Defense Exhibit J. It's the voluntary tasing. Does that appear to be your voluntary tasing session?
Yes.
We've had this explained, but is it a rather controlled setting?
Yes.
Does safety seem to be paramount?
Yes.
The faces are blurred off, but what is everybody wearing on their eyes?
Everyone's wearing safety glasses.
Now, what is your understanding of why the voluntary tasing might be beneficial to recruits?
Just to know the effects of it, to know what you would potentially be doing to someone else as well.
But even though controlled, do you still have to sign a waiver?
Yes.
And essentially, what does the waiver tell them?
Essentially, that waiver, my understanding was relieving the city of any potential liability from injury or death that the device may cause.
Now, who's deploying the taser on you there?
It's a master taser instructor.
Could you please play the video, Mr. McFarland?
Taser, taser, taser.
How'd that feel?
Terrible.
What did it feel like?
Just essentially your muscles contract involuntary to their max capacity, and it's extremely excruciating pain.
Now, can you compare it to anything else that you'd ever experienced?
No.
Have you ever felt like anything like that before in your life?
No.
Now, after having felt the effects of the taser, would you volunteer to do it again?
No.
But prior to being tased there, did the master taser instructor give you some instructions on what was going to happen?
Yes.
What did they tell you?
They did a couple different deployments and varying spread, and he let me know how he was going to deploy it on me
Okay.
and
That-
where.
I'm sorry, where?
Yeah.
And does that help at all with any angst that you may have?
Probably alleviated some.
Now, when you were tased there, did you feel like you had much control over your body?
No.
And we've heard this term, I think, sometimes, taking the ride. Is that what they refer to it as, is when you're under the effects of the taser?
Yes.
How long does that ride last?
5 seconds.
Do you feel during that 5 seconds that you have the ability to defend yourself?
No.
What are you trained that can mean for a police officer in the field if someone fights them for their taser and uses it on them?
They would get access to our firearm.
Now, in police training, do you discuss topics like that? Officers getting disarmed of their weapons?
Yes.
Generally, what are you trained to presume if a subject forcefully disarms an officer of their weapon?
They would use it on us.
The ride is 5 seconds?
It is.
How long do you think it would take for someone to get your firearm off your body and use it on you?
Second.
Mr. McFarland, could you please play that again?
Taser, taser, taser.
What were you trained back then, as far as if the user continued to hold it or continued to press the button?
Well, so it's designed to be charged for 5 seconds, but you can hold the trigger down or keep pressing the trigger to keep doing additional 5-second cycles.
In your training, are you warned not to continually hold it or have repeated trigger pulls on a
Yes.
subject? What were you warned was the risk of prolonged or continuous holds or deployments?
Can cause cardiac arrest.
And is cardiac arrest mentioned in the Axon materials that they go through with you?
Yes.
What can be the result of cardiac arrest?
Death.
Would you expect an untrained person to know that a continued or repeated ride could cause cardiac arrest?
No.
Now, how far was the master taser instructor from you approximately when it was deployed?
Probably 2 feet.
Would that have, particularly with that older model, would that have been optimal probe spread?
No.
Can you just stand up a second?
Yeah.
Where did the probes hit on you?
They hit my, I guess, right leg, just the back side of it, and they were probably only that far apart.
So that's fairly close, is that fair
I
to
would
say?
say it's really close.
But watching that video, was it only your leg that felt the effects of that?
No, I would say it was my entire lower body, but my arms are, it's more or less an involuntary response, so I didn't feel like I had control of my arms.
Do you feel like the taser did its job and was able to incapacitate you?
Yes.
Now, just going back to this topic of a closer deployment like that, after your voluntary tasing, did the GRPD, we've heard there was updates in models.
Yes.
Do you recall what model that old one was?
I don't recall the names. I know at the time of the incident that we're here for, I had the Taser 7.
Okay. And was there a new feature on the Taser 7 for close quarter situations compared to the older model there?
Yes.
And we've heard, was there a new cartridge?
Yes,
Just
I,
explain that.
yeah, I obviously don't know the exact degrees. Essentially, there is a cartridge designed with a wider angle, if you will, to achieve a greater, we'll call it NMI, at close range.
So, if in this video you would have had the newer Taser 7 model and it was deployed at that same distance, what may have been the effect on you there?
I would assume a greater effect as probes get further apart.
Now, besides the cartridges, were you trained that the Taser has the ability to drive stun?
Yes.
And how do you activate the drive stun?
Anytime the device is activated, essentially the drive stun is activated. The drive stun's the technique.
We keep,
I-
the
yeah,
attorneys
it-
keep mixing it up.
Yeah, it's essentially the end of the device gets activated along with the probes and wires.
And then are you taught that you can drive that activation and stun the individual?
Correct.
So it's the action is drive stunning,
Or you would get a greater NMI by doing that.
and I'd like to go into that here, because under what circumstances did GRPD train you to use the drive stun?
Every time we would use the drive stun, it would be to achieve NMI.
So was that the only time you were ever practicing the drive stun on individuals?
Correct.
So to a GRPD officer, you're only using the drive stun in association with NMI?
Correct.
Mr. McFarland, could you please go to it's Defense Exhibit J? And this is the 8-week demonstration on the dummy. Just to confirm, is this you in the video here that
It
we'll
is.
see in a moment?
Yeah.
And was this back in the 8-week academy?
Yes.
Could you please play that, Mr. McFarland? Chris, how far from, that's a dummy, correct? It's not a live person.
Yeah.
How far were you from the dummy when you deployed the probes?
Foot.
And what did you do after you deployed the probes?
I moved the device to what would be the dummy's calf.
Were you trained that that's an acceptable distance to deploy the taser?
Yes.
You've heard throughout this trial some question of you should not deploy the taser at a closer range under some different standards. This is how you were trained, that you could use the taser in that close of quarters?
Correct.
Could you just play it again, please? I'd just like you to focus on unholstering here, please. Be able to see yourself getting the taser out of the holster.
Yeah.
And we've heard the jury's heard some testimony on this already, but does it take some action to get the device out of the taser?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, get the device out of the holster.
So this device, I would say, and holster combination was significantly easier than what I was equipped with on the day of the incident. This one was a little more loose fit, so it was easier to actually, you have a snap, which is kind of hard to undo at times, and then a hood that holds the device in. So this was a little bit looser fit, so it was a little more functional, if you will.
And when the Taser 7 came out, are you provided with new training materials on that?
Yes.
And was that a topic that was discussed in some of those materials as far as that it has a different type of holster?
Yes.
Now, let's just say on this video, what if only one probe connected or made contact even with the dummy there? What would the drive stun do there? What could the drive stun do to help cause NMI?
It would, I guess as they would say, complete the circuit to create they always, I mean, it's always a third point of contact, but you get that another point of contact to create the NMI.
Okay. Now, prior to April 4 of 2022, did you have occasion to actually use your taser on subjects out in the field?
I did,
How many times?
just once.
And where on the body did you deploy the taser on that prior occasion?
Subject's back.
And was it a struggle with the individual, or?
Yes.
And how far away were you from the individual when you deployed?
Foot and a half.
And what did you do after that?
I believe I had to move the device to another area on the subject to achieve NMI.
And what did this assist you in the situation?
Yes.
What were you able to do from that point?
I was able to take the person into custody.
Now, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, okay? But in that prior use out in the field, going to April 4 and the incident that we're here on, the proximity of you and that individual in the prior case, was that a very similar proximity as you were to Mr. Loyola when you went to initially draw your taser?
Yes.
On that prior taser occasion, are you required to notify your department if you use force?
Yeah, any use of force, we have to notify the department.
And was anything found inappropriate about the way you used your taser on that occasion?
No.
What did the department actually do in response to your use of taser on that occasion?
I guess I'm gonna have to object or get into another taser deployment, what the department did or anything is purely irrelevant.
Your Honor, I think it's important to go to what his training was and what his department did as far as in response. They didn't.
To a different incident?
Yeah, to solidify his training and their practices and his experiences.
So I'll sustain that objection, because I don't believe that particular question was one calling for a relevant response to the case.
What's ingrained in your head from that prior experience as far as the distance that you were from Mr. Loyola and whether that might be appropriate?
that it was appropriate.
Now, during Taser training, are recruits and officers, when they're updates, provided with lectures and materials from Axon?
I'm sorry, can you say that?
Are you
again?
provided or gone through with materials from Axon, the manufacturer?
Yes.
And what are you warned about the Taser?
That it can cause serious bodily injury or death.
Now, are you trained on preferred target areas of the body to use the Taser?
Yes.
And how do they show you this in general? Do you recall anything in particular? I think it's in
It's
some
just,
of that.
yeah, it's just a body and it shows caution areas.
And are you trained on areas to avoid then?
Yes.
And we've heard this area is sensitive areas. Is that something that's discussed?
Yes.
What areas on the body are you trained to avoid using the Taser upon?
Essentially the head, neck, genital region,
And
and chest.
are you taught to avoid either shooting probes or using drive stun on those areas?
Yes.
What are you trained can be the risk of Taser use on the eyes?
Blindness.
Now, are you also advised that Taser use on some of these sensitive areas can just overall cause serious injury or death?
Yes.
So that's you, the officer, that's what you're being instructed directly from the manufacturer, is that fair to say?
Yes.
Now, going back to the 8-week here, after the 8-week, what are your duties?
I'm assigned to a field training officer. Essentially, we go into a FTO program that's 4 months long. You're given different training officers to grade your performance on a daily basis.
And I'm sorry, you said that's how long?
4 months.
4 months with an FTO,
Correct.
is that what they're referred to?
Yes.
And along the way, they're evaluating and critiquing you, is that right?
That's right.
And over time, do they start to give you more responsibilities?
Yes.
Do you deem the FTO, are they essentially an extension of the training unit?
They are.
Would an FTO generally be well-versed in the rules, policies, and the practices of the department?
Should be, yes.
At some point, were you an FTO down the road?
Yes.
For how long approximately?
I think 3 or 4 years.
So did you essentially train other officers in the Grand Rapids Police Department
Yes.
on practices, policies, and procedures? Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Now, going to April of 2022, how long would you have been an officer with GRPD in April 2022?
Almost 7 years.
In April 2022, were you overall physically fit?
Yes.
Were you a little ways from your college athletic days, or did you maintain that for?
I think it'd be fair to say I didn't have the amount of time to dedicate to exercise like I did in my college days.
But in April 2022, what did you do to maintain fitness, just generically?
I exercise 5 or 6 days a week, whether it's cardio or weightlifting.
Okay. Anything marathons, Ironman, anything like that?
No.
How about MMA or competitive wrestling, anything along those lines?
No.
Why did you stay physically fit?
I just think it's important. We are required to back up our partners and assist people on calls, and unfortunately, part of our job is sometimes we have to go hands-on with people.
Okay. During the 6 years of service up until April 2022, do you have ongoing trainings?
Yes.
Can you just give us a little synopsis, or how often?
I'd say we have regular trainings. It started to become more regular with smaller blocks at that time, so we might have been doing training maybe a couple times a month on different topics.
Are there policy updates over the course of that time?
Yes.
And are you required to stay up to date on policy changes?
Yes.
Is that something you took seriously?
Yes.
Now, as a road patrol officer in GRPD in April of 2022, were there certain crimes that were more prevalent or perhaps more of concern for you out on the road in that time?
Yes.
What were they?
I would say in the city at that time, we had to worry about gun violence, drugs, and stolen cars.